All right, well, good morning, guys. Thought we'd do another little Fleabay edition. And I thought today I would do lathes because I very rarely do lathes, and the reality is it just doesn't interest me that much. So I apologize for that, but I thought we'd look at lathes here. Now, I've been kind of going through some of this stuff, and I've waded through the normal few gears and gear studs and stuff like that. And in all honesty, it just doesn't interest me that much because it's the same old crap that we've looked at before. Collars, they're wanting $8 and $10 for countershaft collars, on stuff like that. Shop locally, go to McMaster. You can get brand new stuff that's going to fit right on there exactly the way it's supposed to be, and you're probably going to get a better deal. Plus you've got new parts on there. Some of this old junk is just that. This is the parts that are left over, and they're still trying to get new or plus new prices under the guise that they're an Atlas, proprietary part, and they're not. They're a universal part. Atlas did a lot of stuff using on off-the-shelf stuff if they could get it. Cuts down on manufacturing costs for a lot of things. Some of that stuff was just off-the-shelf stuff. They're trying to produce machines as inexpensively as they could. So anyway, like I say, I've gone through some of that stuff. I've skipped over, and I've got one here that does interest me, or it did interest me because it was astronomically priced and was something unique, I guess. So we'll start with this one. We'll go through it, and I'm going to dig into it pretty deep because it's kind of interesting to, when you kind of know a little bit of the history of the Atlas stuff and the parts that fit on what and everything, why you come up with some stuff like this. So we'll go through this, and then we'll go on down the line and see if we see anything else and see if we can make a decent little Fleabay edition. So first up here is an Atlas lathe milling attachment with rare 10-inch, 12-inch base. And the description says, and then we'll go and look at the pictures of this. For sale is it's rare, milling attachment for a 10 or 12-inch Atlas lathe with the base. I've never seen one like this before with the base that clamps to the ways. It functions as it should, is in very nice condition with nothing broken. Don't know what else to say about it. Check out all the pictures. It's heavy, so the shipping is high, but I'll pack it well. Anyway, so all this is just an abortion of parts. This is somebody's, and they want $700 for this, or best offer. So let's look at the big pictures of this. This is nothing but an abortion of parts. So, and I've gone through all the pictures, and we'll talk about them again when we get there. When we look at the base, this is actually a drill press base. It's a W68 base, I think it is. Yeah, W68, universal compound vise is what it starts out being. And it's that vise right there. That's what the base is. That's what this section right down here is a W68 base. So that's what we begin with. And it's a drill press base is what it is. It's, had a universal drill press table on it, or a universal table on it on a drill press is what it was designed for. Now this is the milling attachment for probably a 10, 12-inch machine. Now when we just look at the pictures right off the bat, this hand wheel looks okay. This hand wheel's not original. It would have had a standard original hand wheel like this on. And we'll talk about the rest of this stuff as we go along here. So we look at this picture. This is not an original handle. These are stops they've added for something. This is the clamp down things they've added for something. Now the universal table would have been, I think, basically this piece right here, although I do not believe this is the proper base because the table would have mounted right on here, is the way I think that mounted. Let's go back and look at the picture again. That may or may not be the proper base, this section here. So assuming that lower portion is proper, it's a W68 cross feed table on a drill press. So, I'm going to say these are worth $120 probably for the base part of it here. Now here you've got the beginnings of the universal, or of the milling attachment that goes on top is going to be this back portion here is going to be proper for that. And we can look at this. This is 1/2 of the vice jaw that went with this universal table or the standard universal table that fits on the lathe compound on the Atlas lathes. So that's what this portion right here is. It's half of a 2-piece vice setup for on there. Now this portion back here, that's not the proper for a vice here, and this is not proper. So let's go on to the next picture here. And some of these don't mean anything. That 10501. Yeah. So let's see. They've added some stops here some way to adjust the swivel, which indicates to me that we don't have a proper swivel that clamps on underneath this. Now maybe there is, and maybe these are just stops for the swivel if it was used in some particular application, but this portion is not proper here for a universal vice thing. Okay, a little bit better picture here now. Assuming that up to this point, this is the proper elevation slide that goes on here. This is all an abortion here. There again, that's part of your 2-piece vice. This is this whole assembly here from around here and around all this section. Let's see what it looks like up close. Okay, so all of this portion is not proper for the milling attachment. And what it looks like to me is probably the compound, part of the compound off of a 12-inch lathe is what I'm guessing that is. Now this bottom jaw here, I would say this is probably part of a compound slide off of something, maybe just a 6-inch compound that the dovetail's been machined off the bottom, because I would think that's probably the screw hole that attaches the bronze nut that goes on for the screw that goes through, or lock screw something, I'm not sure. And then this would be the actual screw that went through, maybe. It's whatever it is, it's not right. You know, it's not right. But that to me looks like it's part of a cross slide assembly with the dovetails machined off the bottom. And then this vise. And the reason I say this section is probably, and I'm guessing there's a seam right there where it's welded, bolted, something together to get that as an upper jaw. And see, this has been extended up because this jaw is taller than what is originally on these milling attachments to accept this vice jaw. The reason I say this is a 12 inches off of a 12-inch lathe compound is because of the thickness here. You would have the screws to lock it onto this side and the other side to lock it onto the post that sticks up on the compound, and or on the cross slide, and an index pointer here, which that looks like somebody's added on index pointer. Looks like it's screwed on there because it would have just been a hash mark stamped down in there. But this is tall enough from here to here that I'm going to say that that's off of a 12-inch. It's way too thick for, I believe, even a 10-inch. So that, I believe, is what this is. So this is just kind of a conglomeration of parts. You know, milling attachments, I say, in complete original condition with vices and everything, are still only worth a couple $100 on the outside. It's a very limited capability attachment. If you've only got a lathe, why then it can get you by on some things, but it's not a real, to me, it's not a real desirable attachment. But all this is a conglomeration of parts. This is just an abortion here. So somebody's attempt to have something that they thought was going to be something, and it's really not. And see, this is a giveaway here. You look at, this is the original paint underneath, this darker gray, and there's your W68 casting marks there. So that's a giveaway. That's what this is. So designed to attach to a drill press originally, and now they're touting it to go on a metal lathe. This is a piece of crap is what this is. You know, I'm going to say this attachment's worth $200, you know, not even close to 700. So that's what we got there. So let's go on down and see if we see anything worth looking at. There may not be anything else that's worth doing. And a lot of stuff I'm not going to go look at, just because you can go back and look if you think it's worth looking at. You know, most of this, as far as parts, everything I've seen so far, and I'm halfway down the first page, most of this stuff is the leftover things that they haven't been able to sell. So they're just trying to part it out to get rid of it. And I'm not going to go in and look at a lot of this. Atlas Craftsman 10-12-inch metal lathe headstock bed clamp with bolt and washer, $12.89, and free delivery. That's fair for what this is. All it is a small casting to lock the headstock onto the bed, you know. And what they've done is they've parted out the machine, they've sold the bed, they've sold the headstock, and this is leftover crap. So, you know, and this is from a seller that's got a whole lot of feedback. I don't see him selling stuff for mills or shapers, but I do remember his name here from lathe stuff. So don't know anything about him. You know, he's got good feedback, got a lot of feedback there and everything, but all this is the leftover crap. You know, here's a picture of this. So $12.98 is probably worth that. Well, it is worth that, you know, if you need one of these. But there again, if you're trying to assemble something, that's the only reason you're going to need one. You know, these are just a small casting that most people are not going to need. You know? So 12-inch metal lathe reverse tumbler with stud, pre-owned, $20 and free delivery. Now see, this is going to be the same seller, I believe. Yeah, same seller. If you need one of these, and I'm not going to read description or anything, if you need one of these, it's worth $20, you know. But why do you really need one? And this is why I don't mess with lathes too much. The parts are so available and so common that it's just not, to me, it's not really worth looking at that much. You know, I say any casting's worth 10 or $20 if it's a decent sized casting, something like this. And realistically, the only reason you're going to need one of these is if you've had a fall over with your machine and it's busted this handle some way, or you've whacked it trying to get something loosened up that you shouldn't be doing, or something from user stupidity type of thing. Otherwise, you don't need one of these. You know, I've built my production lathe, but it's only because it was built as a production lathe. You know, I don't know that I will ever try and build a standard Atlas lathe just because it's not worth doing. There's other machines that are much more capable and the same amount of money, or less. So, you know, you make your choices and pays your money. I love the Atlas stuff, but a lot of them, this is just stuff. This is just stuff not worth having. Lathe parts and accessories, pre-owned, $34.99 and $9.74 delivery. Don't recognize this seller either, but there again, I don't look at Atlas or at Atlas lathe stuff very much. Doesn't interest me. Miscellaneous Atlas Craftsman lathe parts and accessories. You're getting everything that is pictured. Everything appears to be in good condition. Okay, you're getting everything that's pictured. They're showing a dollar bill there, so you should expect a dollar bill when you receive this stuff, because there's your dollar bill. They've only got the one picture. Let's see what we got here. Now, that may be a counter shaft assembly right in the middle there. Or a counter shaft part with those holes in it. I don't know for sure. Those look like shell end mill holders to me, would be my guess. That's going to be a end mill holder, I'm assuming. Got a set screw there and got a taper, so we've got a Morse taper end mill holder. And then we've got some cutters that are probably well used and abused. You know, the shell end mill holders, if that's indeed what they are, I don't know that they're probably worth the price of admission. You know, it may very well be the best thing out of that whole sale is that dollar bill, assuming you're going to get that dollar bill and not get cheated out of it. Anyway, let's see. 12-inch metal lathe headstock spindle guard L6724 pre-owned, $24.99 and $16.60 shipping. If you need one of these, that's probably a fair price. If you need one. Anything in the description that's worth reading? Front lift knob is not included. Let's see, does it show it with the front lift knob? Yeah, see, it doesn't. Now see, this I believe is the, I believe this is the later model. This may be the commercial model, although I'm not 100% sure. There again, I don't watch this stuff that close. To me, that has look of the 3400 series. I think it's 3413s or whatever the commercial lathes are. This has more of that look to me. I could be mistaken. The earlier guards that were the safety guards for the 10 and 12 inch were quite a bit different. They were a real, I think they were a lighter casting than this, but they were shaped a little bit differently. I don't believe this is for the earlier 10 and 12 inch machines. Let's see if they show us a casting number that we can read. Yeah, maybe it is. I always look at this front contour to match, and this might be for the, although this is different than the set that I've got. This may be for the earlier ones, but I can't tell you 100% sure. Anyway, a little bit interesting, but not that much. Okay, a lot of metal lathe parts, gears, used machine parts, Atlas South Bend pre-owned. When there's specific machine parts and they throw in Atlas South Bend, to me they're not either too lazy to write out what they're actually selling or don't know what they're selling. So it's, you know, if they're machine parts, they're not going to be Atlas and South Bend. They're going to be one or the other. $22.99 zero bids, $21.95 delivery. So what's the description tell us? Have wear and rust, various makes, brands unknown, all to appear to be in usable order. See photo of items and sizes. Alright, so somebody's selling something, they don't know what it is. So let's look at the big picture and see what we can identify. That is going to be an apron. This is going to be the forward reverse gearbox. Now see, I can't tell from so far if these are a 6-inch or a 10-12 inch. This is end gearing and forward reverse. These are Atlas parts too. This is the Atlas gear guard. This is the lead screw bearing that goes on the tailstock end from a different machine since it's a blue color. This is the forward reverse what is that? That's the headstock end of the lead screw, I believe. I believe. Okay. So I'm wondering if this is 6-inch. There's a... Okay. See that 823Z, that's a number I don't recognize. Nine dash something. That may be an Atlas part, but I can't tell you what it is. And this is a something that I'll bet is a Wood lathe tool rest of some sort, I think. Don't know. Don't know. So those are junk. That I believe those are both Atlas lead screw parts. I think this is upside down. I think this bolts to the bed, although I don't remember those through holes like that. This would go into the forward reverse gearbox, and your lead screw would come out this end heading towards the tailstock down here. (9-19). I wonder if this fits the earlier 9-inch machine rather than the 10-inch. This is a 9 dash number. I don't honestly know. And that's the little guard cover that goes on the headstock on the gearing end. The actual swing open guard latches into that. 10 inches long. This must be for a 10-12 inch. So yeah, pretty yucky inside. Got no half nuts. See, those have been robbed out. They've either been destroyed or else they've been robbed out and parted out. Pretty nasty looking. You know, probably clean up and be functional, but pretty nasty looking. End gears with the quadrants and stuff. Gears don't look spectacular. Sometimes it's hard to tell what you're actually getting with some of these gears and things. Sometimes they look pretty chowdered up, and the pictures don't do them justice. They're in better shape than they actually look. Other ones, they'll look halfway decent, and they're really nasty once you actually see them. And so it's kind of tough to tell on parts like that. Same way with these bevel gears. You know, a lot of times they're really chowdered up, and as greasy and dirty as these are, I'm going to say these are probably kind of nasty. You know, if you're just wanting those gears, you're probably not getting a good deal by buying those. See, yeah, those you can't tell, but those look really chowdered up there along that edge. But it may just be the yuck in the pictures. And I could go and look at those closer, but there again, am I really that interested? Are you guys really that interested? I'll just leave that at that. You know, the sum of its parts, if you're needing, if you can get that lot for $75 in your door, it's probably not a bad deal with everything you got. It may not be perfect, but there may be some usable parts in there. If I was in the market, I probably would not be afraid to give about $50 and the $23 shipping that they want. Much more than that, probably not. But, you know, this is kind of one of those that I consider it kind of a gamble. You don't know exactly what you're going to get there. All right, let's go on and see if we see anything else more interesting. Enco 2.5 4-way tool post holder, Atlas Craftsman South Bend, $100, and buy it now with free delivery. I don't think so. You're better off investing your money in a quick change tool post. You know, if you're running just a production machine on one project or something, yeah, you know, on the Atlas machine that I put together, I use a 4-way tool post on it. But if you're using it on an everyday machine that you're wanting to use, you're better off investing in a probably imported quick change tool post. I think you end up with more functionality. Atlas Craftsman 618-101 6-inch lathe parts, and this is going to be a compound assembly. $80 or best offer and $10 delivery. Don't recognize the seller. What do we got for? Everything is still working and moves freely. So let's look. Yeah, it looks to be a good 6-inch compound. Not broken out like they get to be. It doesn't look like. Got a little bit of chipping there probably. Been scarfed up a few times. Doesn't. Yeah, maybe it does. It looks like it's got Allen head set screws in there. Got the gib with it. No handle. A bit of rust there. It's been sitting in one place. Yeah, a little bit of brown stuff everywhere. You know, if you're needing a 6-inch compound, this is probably not a bad one, with the exception of not having the handle. You know, you see stuff that's a whole lot worse than this is. So, you know, pays your money, takes your chances. For what did they want for it? $80. $80 and $10 shipping. $90. Yeah, it's probably worth that. You know, I'd be more inclined to offer them $50 in shipping, but probably wouldn't take $50 in shipping. It's probably okay to give $80 for it. $10 12-inch metal lathe, threading chart, tag, badge, and rivets. $10.99 pre-owned. $30 in free delivery. Yeah, see, they parted out the machine with the idea that they can make an extra $40, $30, whatever it is, by selling the tag. Now it's showing the door latch too. You know, if they're going to give you the door latch, that's worth something. So I'd say the door latch is more valuable than the tag. Gonna be kind of yucky, oil stained. What happens a lot of times when you go to clean these up, why then it wants to, you end up taking the paint off and they look like shit. Huh. Well, I'm not seeing anything that really intrigues me. Okay. $10 12-inch metal lathe counter shaft, 2-step pulley and 4-step assembly. $100 and $16.58 shipping, or best offer. See, they're parting out machines. That always irritates me anyway. But right off the bat, we're looking at this big old hunk out of this pulley. And see, a lot of times what happens with these is these guys will try and get them off the shaft so they can sell them separate from the shaft. Well, this one probably wouldn't come off, and they busted the edge of the pulley. Suppose we could go look at the description, but maybe not. So, big scarf out there. What else we got? Yeah, there's a better picture of it. You know, it will probably clean up okay and be all right. You know, I can't honestly say that a lot of these prices on stuff is too far out of line. But it may be because there's an abundance of these parts out there yet. There again, I haven't been watching lathe stuff close enough lately to know what they're doing. $100, I'd offer them 80, but $100 is probably not too far out. Now this one's where they're screwing you here. Atlas Craftsman 10-inch lathe countershaft assembly with motor mount refurbished. $199 your best offer, but they want $77.25 delivery for it. Now let's go look and see what they got. See what they say. See what they say for us. Unit was roofed with TH54 is compatible with, let's see. This assembly is from the lathe of the original purchaser who bought it in 1947 and cared for it very well through the years. Countershaft bearings are in very good condition, were cleaned and repacked with moly grease. All the pulleys and drive wheels are straight and true. No cracks or chips, and are in great condition. Has been completely stripped of original paint, brushed and degreased, then repainted with Rust-Oleum industrial spray enamel paint. Okay, he gives shipping and says shipping charges calculated to your location without any additional charges. So you don't honestly know what the shipping is going to be. Now see, I question on these if it was the original buyer, why is he parting it out now if it was in such good shape? Because it should be, you maybe not are going to get as much money by parting it out, but you're going to have a nicer machine that you can pass along to somebody else to use. So if it was the original owner and it was in excellent condition or really good condition, I would think it probably wouldn't be parted out if it's as described. So I guess we got 11 pictures here. Let's take the time to actually go through and look at it. And you're not going to be able to tell a whole lot because it's been all stripped down. And see, it's been repainted with Rust-Oleum. Well, I'm seeing an awful lot of chipped paint. Maybe that's just shadow off of it that shows it's not there, but is that, it doesn't look like there's paint there. It looks like we may have a little wonk there on that pulley area right there, although he said no, it was motor mount's kind of scarfed up. Everything looks kind of scarfed up for being just stripped and repainted and in very good condition. I would think we would be seeing more of the pivot shafts sticking out of that hole. Yeah, this is pretty well chipped up for, let's go back and look at that description about the repaint on it, because I'm thinking no. Cared for it very well. It has been completely stripped of original paint, brushed and degreased, then repainted industrial spray enamel. But it doesn't say when that was done. So I'm going to say if that was done, it was done quite some time ago, because it looks uglier than... This is not a fresh repaint on this. It doesn't appear to be to me. That pulley looks wonky right there. Maybe I'm mistaken, but okay. Yeah, see, I'm seeing chipped paint. Yeah, I'm seeing scratches, scrapes. You know, this blue looks different enough that these bolt heads, they've flaked off from where it was originally. In this day and age, you pretty much have to question everything. And part of this may be lighting. You know, it may be in very good condition. Oh, look at that shaft. That's awful. Is that paint or is that corrosion there? There again, hard to tell from the lighting. When they tell me how great they are, and then they don't look quite as great through the pictures, it makes me question. Now see, it doesn't look like there's any marks where it's been, maybe there is a little bit there, where it's been bolted down to a bench top, you know, since it's been repainted, yet it doesn't look good enough to have just been repainted just now. The sum of its whole parts. See, look at the chipping off of there. See, I'm going to say if it was repainted, it wasn't a really great job, and see, we got gunk there. We're chipped around here. We're showing some rusties along there. Yeah, we're showing some rust here. This is not. Look at the rust on that shaft. You know, I kind of feel like you're buying a pig in a poke there. Yeah, see, I think somebody's been smoking dope here. Look at how beat up this is. At some point, yes, it has been repainted. It was not prepped well underneath. It's not held up well, and it doesn't have a whole lot of paint on there. So you're buying used parts that you're going to have to rework this if you want it to be in as good a condition as they're claiming it's in. See, look at the staining here. That's a wonky in that pulley. That whole top section is wonky on that one. Yeah. Looks like they've probably had some vice grips or something, a pair of channel locks on the knurled nut to grease it. Would be my guess, just from looking at the pictures. There again, see, once I see things that are not as they're described, then I'm looking for the worst. So I may be making a mountain out of a molehill on a lot of things, but this is not the pristine unicorn that is being advertised as. Look at all the staining on there. This has been wet, and see, it's been either wire brushed or hand brushed off sandpaper, steel wool, something to clean that outer pulley up. Now it's going to be a good functional setup. You know, I don't see anything that's going to, look at how we're still grungy in the corner up there. It's not anything that's going to disintegrate, not be usable, or anything like that. It doesn't appear to me, but it's not as it's advertised. So, for me, when I see that, am I going to take him at face value for $199 or best offer? You know, it's not. I'd say it's worth $140, $150. I would almost say it would be worth $199, other than the fact that the description is not as accurate as it could be. So it makes me question it. So anyway, that's that one. Here's one right below it for a 101 Atlas 6-inch 618 countershaft assembly complete. They want $250 and free delivery. So basically, when you figure in delivery costs, they want about the same for that as they want for the 10-inch above it. So let's see what they say. Came off working Craftsman, 6-inch lathe, good overall condition. I will be listing many more parts off this lathe. If it's in good overall condition, why are you parting it out? It just pisses me off. Bunch of pot smokers. $250. See, in my mind, these 6-inch machines should only go complete for the, at the most, $500-600. So if he's trying to get $250 for just the counter shaft assembly, by the time he gets done parting out this machine, if you were to buy all the parts, you're probably going to have $1,500, $2,000 in this machine, and they're not worth it. Okay. Rusty. Rusty. Huh. Now, let's look at this. Yeah, see, it's all brown along here. It's all... You know, I'm beginning to lose my interest now even more, but, you know, this thing's worth $100 is what it's worth. You know, $100 and $20 shipping, maybe. There's no way it's worth $250. Don't do it, guys. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Yeah, this is a piece of stuff. There again, something that can be made functional, but you're not just going to want to slam it on your bench and hook it to your lathe like this. Even if you do need this counter shaft assembly, you're going to have to disassemble it, redo everything, repaint it, clean it all up. Look at how brown it is on the handle there. You know, the shafts are going to be rusty. You're going to have trouble getting them apart. It's worth $100. That's all it's worth. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's worth $100. So, pays your money, takes your chances. Now, this is one that gets me, and it always has, and I've talked about it before. Lathe chucks. Atlas Craftsman 4-inch metal lathe, 4-jaw lathe chuck, 1.5/8 thread mount, pre-owned, $139.99 and $10 delivery. Now, I tend to be kinder to the 4-jaw chucks because you can basically make them concentric unless they're really chowdered up. They want $139.99 and $10 delivery for this. They're selling, and I passed up several 3-jaws earlier on, you know, before I started recording this stuff. 3-jaw chucks are not going to run true. You know, these older chucks, they were fine for their day, and realistically, if they haven't been run, they're probably gonna perform fine. And on a 6-inch lathe, you're probably not going to notice the run out that's there. Especially if you can turn them into a true adjust chuck. You can get them to where they're pretty functionally close. And same way with a 10-inch chuck, 10 or 12-inch. If you're putting them on a 10 or a 12-inch machine for the size they are, you can usually take a 3-jaw chuck, make it into a true adjust chuck with a little bit of machining, and get something that's functional. But are they worth what they're wanting for them? No way. They're worth about half. I like USA built stuff, but for functionality, you can do far better buying a new imported chuck that's going to be the same money or less, and you're going to get better accuracy out of it, better concentricity, better running. 4-jaws, you can adjust them out a little bit more, but here again, for this 4-inch metal chuck, they want $140 and $10 shipping. Are they worth $150? See, clean, good working chuck. Some grind marks on threaded backing plate. If it's got grind marks on it and stuff, you know, these little chucks they're very limited in their use. You're not going to be able to do a whole lot with them. And a 4-inch chuck, I say that on a 4-inch, 4-inch on a 6-inch machine, you're going to be at the capacity of that machine probably. But is it worth $140? No, these are about a $75 chuck. These little 4-inchers. See, they've ground it to be able to get a wrench on it, is what they've done. That's what they've done there. That's why you got grind marks. Yeah, $60, $75. That's all it's worth. 140. No. Bunch of stuff. Now here's a 6-inch chuck, Cushman Industries 6-inch lathe chuck with an 1.5" backing plate. $300 and $52 delivery. No. This is a 6-inch chuck. Let's see what they say. Just because. 1.5/8 thread, comes as seen in photos, dimensions and photos, functions, needs cleaned. You're buying a used piece of crap is what you're buying. For $300? No way. No way. You got staining on it. And yeah, it's a nice American-made chuck, but who knows how well it runs. It's a 4-jaw, so you're going to be able to make it run. But grind mark there on that jaw anyway, or a crash mark, I should say. Which is not going to affect it, but is it worth $300? No. This is a decent enough looking chuck and everything. $150. $100. Yeah, it's a $100 chuck. And there again, to put that on a 10-inch machine, you've got 3 inches worth of chuck there that you're, I think it was what, 2 inches, and then you got another inch for that backing plate. Yeah, see, you got almost 2 inches plus the jaws hanging out there. You got 3 inches you're hanging out on the front of that spindle. It's not even a direct mount, which is going to be much better on a lighter machine. No. Yeah, $150. That's all it's worth. Another one right below it, $200 and $75.95 delivery. The one above, they wanted $352.15. Not even going to go and look at it. It makes me tired. Oh, commercial headstock. I don't do much with commercials, so I won't even look at that. Craftsman 6-inch independent 4-jaw chuck, 1.5/8 thread per inch Atlas, South Bend, pre-owned, $144.99 and free delivery. Now, this one's actually, let's see how this one is, and this is from a seller we've been looking at before. Good used condition. The only thing I'm interested in on this is to look at overall thickness and see. Now see, this has got an interchangeable backing plate, but it's listed as Craftsman, and you don't have nearly, I wish it gave the dimensions, you don't have, I don't think, nearly the thickness that you have with that Cushman that we looked at earlier. I would guess this is probably a 1.5" thickness, 1 3/4 thickness maybe, as opposed to almost 3. And that's another consideration on these light machines is, are you gonna, why do you want to hang one of those big long chucks off of it. If they worked that well, then why did the manufacturer, whether it would have been Atlas, they knew enough to tuck these in close to the headstock and not take up valuable lathe space and not put that extra weight and length hanging out there unnecessarily on the front of their spindle bearings. Oh, this is almost that thick. This is 2 3/4, so this is fairly thick too. So I'm maybe full of crap there, but I still, in my experience, these are quite a bit, you know, an inch and a half actual body thickness. So it's still a ½ inch thinner than that Cushman. You know, you can decide for yourself whether that makes any difference to you or not, but I think it makes a little bit. Tool holders, tool holders. Original metal lathe, 10-inch Atlas metal lathe tailstock assembly, $150 and $25 shipping. Why do you need one? It's not going to line up with your headstock. You know, we can be pretty much assured of that. What's the description say? Used condition with dings and scratches. Has a few spots of surface rust. So, $25 shipping. $150 to buy-in price. Oh, got the oiler with it. Proper knobs. Proper hand wheel, it looks like. I'm not sure that's a proper knob. These were normally fully rounded on top. It looks like this one's been plated. So and that's a minor thing. That's a neither here nor there. But it is grungy looking. But all in all, not bad. Price-wise, they're worth $100. You know, 75 or $100. Yeah, 75 or $100, something like that. Cushman 3005 Craftsman Atlas South Bend metal lathe, 5-inch 3-jaw chuck, incomplete parts only. There's no jaws with it. Yeah, good luck finding the right jaws. You know, if you're buying this stuff off of Fleabay here, and you buy a chuck and you find jaws that supposedly fit, well, they're probably not, and you know, a piece of shit. That's crap that's left over. Yeah, see, I don't see a seller here that I recognize. And oh yeah, there's no backing plate on this, I don't believe. Yeah, you're buying a piece of cast iron that's worthless is what you're doing for your $50. No jaws included, found in an estate sale. And it seems to be missing the 3 Allen bolts that, let's see, no jaws included. 3 Allens that fit through the 3 outer holes, as well as missing the bottom plate whose Allen bolts connect to. So you got no backing plate. The mechanism that moves the jaws does work normally. Jaws were removed and are being sold separately, so it does work, but it's missing the jaws and missing the bottom thread plate. Why would you do that? You sell that with the jaws, then it's at least somewhat functional, unless they were just beyond. Oh, that's stupid. That is stupid. No, that's worth nothing. Absolutely nothing. Some gears. My interest is waning very quickly here. Atlas Craftsman 12-inch metal lathe headstock Babbitt bearings with shims and oil cups, $20. Well, you kind of need the rest of the headstock with it now, don't you? Oh, pot smokers. These people are pot smokers. I'm skipping a lot of stuff here just because I have no interest. None. None, none, none. Bunch of chucks. Lathe apron, $219.99 and 27 bucks. Now I can pretty much guarantee you that these are going to be wore out. What does it say here? Atlas apron straight from the lathe. I haven't cleaned it up at all out of inventory of a local estate. Comes as shown. That's the disclaimer right there. I've done nothing to it, but I want 220 bucks and 27 bucks to ship it. Okay. Well, 10 pictures here. Let's look at all the grunge on this. Now see, that looks like rust, although that's a Zamac and chrome plated hand wheel, so it's probably there's going to be rust on the nut, but the rest of that should just be grunge, and that looks like nasty grunge there. See, that looks to be corroded, and those were all, that should have been Zamac that was chrome plated. So what's happened to that? This is nasty. Nasty, nasty. Okay, this is an earlier lathe. This is not a power cross feed apron. Look at how grungy all of this is. This is nasty. This is nasty. That's going to be rust on the plating itself, or the whatever the substrate for the plating was. Yeah, this is nasty looking. This is an earlier model apron. What you find on most of these, oh, maybe it is a power cross feed. Yeah, I guess it is. What you'll find on these is these are wore out in the casting. They just flat wore out in the casting. Probably that lever too. You know, there's going to be a whole lot of slop in there. They'll be functional, but there's so much slop that you're going to continue to wear them. There's not really any sense in looking too much closer at this. Looks like the top of that gear is gone. Look at all that rust. This has sat in the water someplace and just collected crap. This thing's worth 60 bucks. They want 219 for it. That's bullshit. Let's see, there's a 4-inch 4-job mount independent, 1-inch bore, 1 and 12. That's probably a faceplate that they've mounted that to. I suppose we could go and look at it real quick. 109 bucks. The only thing I want to see is the back of it. These little Craftsman chucks are cool. You know, I've got one probably in about this condition. And they are a cool little chuck if you've got a use for them. Now I've actually got mine set up on a direct mount spindle and I use it occasionally on my Sheldon lathe. Yeah, see, this was a slotted faceplate, I believe is what this was, and they just drilled it to accept that chuck. Or else it was a much larger backing plate that's just been machined out for whatever reason. May have been a backing plate that somebody converted to use as a slotted faceplate with those two slots in it. But so, you know, 109 bucks in that respect. It's probably pretty close to that, only because you've got a chuck that you can put on an actual mount to go on there. Of course, that's added expense, but you've also got a faceplate underneath that you could utilize. That could be better utilized there. that's about all I'm really seeing. Nothing's intriguing me. They got a bunch of crap. You know, just a bunch of crap is what most of it is. So yeah, you know, you pays your money, takes your chances, and see what you can come up with. Atlas 618, 101, 618 lathe, swivel base and compound, pre-owned, $85 and $12 delivery. Yeah, they're worth $50. Looks like the handle's busted. Anyway, hopefully if you've stuck along with me this long, I apologize. This is not necessarily my best forte here on lathe stuff, and it's kind of tough for me to go through this sometimes. So hopefully you found something a little bit interesting and useful. Comments, suggestions, guys, leave in the comment section for me below. And as always, thanks for taking the time to watch.